Greetings, good people, and welcome to Choice Words Podcast, brought to you by Freedom to Choose Schools. I'm your host, Jay Artist Wright, and you'll see a little bit of change this season from what you've seen in the past from us. We are actually reporting, not live, but in person in New Orleans. We're here for a charter school conference, amongst other things. If you know the history of school choice and education reform, you know New Orleans specifically has some pivotal data to be able to share about how they've been able to transform and turn around some schools here. But also we've just learned that just the history of school choice overall has been in existence here in New Orleans since the early turn of the century. So anyway, excited to be here today. And when I mentioned data, it's really important. It was one of the reasons why we have our guest here, Debbie Veney, who is with Agency. And her face may look familiar because we had her on our I think season 1.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll let Debbie introduce herself again for those who may not remember her. Debbie Veney is here today because one of the things that's most important when we talk about this work is also to see the value of quantitative data. And so Debbie's organization, Agency Inc., has done some tremendous work with researching and polling that I'm just super excited to dive into and have you share the study and the findings. So Debbie, why don't you let our guests know a little bit about you if they didn't tune in the first time?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jay. It's always a great time when we're together.
Indeed, yeah.
So I'm Debbie Veney. I'm the founder and CEO of Agency. And before founding this organization, which is a strategic communications and advocacy organization, primarily devoted to K-12 public education choice. Before founding that organization, I ran national communications and marketing advertising and the national conference for the national charter schools.
Which we are at right now.
Right. The National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Mm-hmm. And before that, did my time at a few places you've heard of, the Gates mm-hmm. Foundation, where I ran their domestic facing media relations work, and also New Schools Venture Fund, where I ran their communications and policy work, and Education Trust. And little known fact, National Alliance for Public Charter Schools was so nice, I did it twice. Yeah. So I actually was there.
That's awesome.
About 10 years prior and then mm-hmm. came back.
Well, that's actually great too, because that says a lot about the trajectory of work, because I always know your stamp on things, because I really feel like you just go full circle. And what I love about the work that Agency has done and just what you've done as a leader is you are all inclusive. Like, so it's not just the stories of the grass tops, it's mm-hmm. the stories of the grassroots. It's not just getting it from one angle, it's looking at the holistic view, both sides of the fence. So I know Agency and Freedom to Choose Schools, we did some polling together in the past, and I'm super excited just to continue to see this work grow, because you're bringing a different perspective that we often don't see. A lot of times people who use polling and data, it's a certain group. Mm-hmm. And what's been so refreshing about your work is that it's bringing light to groups that often we don't hear from, which is the whole point of doing this Choice Words podcast, but also just like the authenticity of like what's real. So let's dive right into the study, because you, if I recall, it was like about 5,000. Mm-hmm. Which is a huge study, 5,000. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll let you tell it.
So the report is called Turning the Tassel.
Turning the Tassel, all right.
And mm-hmm. it is a poll of 5,000 young people who graduated high school between 2015 and 2025. Mm-hmm. Now, I just thought 10 years would be a great, space of time. Yeah. To measure. Mm-hmm. What I didn't realize when I began the process is that 2015 is actually the year of the first Generation Z graduating from high school. So that was their first graduating class in 2015. So it turns out that the report is entirely about life outcomes for Generation Z.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. No, that's amazing. You just kind of like lucked up on that one.
Right, I did.
I think that's like that Malcolm Gladwell theory where you do everything in 10 years and you become an expert. So that tracks. That tracks. All right, so you did this study, and then what are some of the findings? Let's just tell us what you found out.
Okay, so we wanted to look at life outcomes for high school graduates. And my premise going into this was that if schools had done a good job educating young people, then the proof would be not in backwards looking data like what their GPA was when they were in high school,
okay,
or what their standardized assessments were like when they were in high school, but how much money do they make? Are they employed? Did they get a post-secondary credential? What kind? Are they registered to vote?
Wow.
Right. Do they own their own homes? Do they live on their own? And I think most of us, you're a mom, I'm a mom, we measure the success of our kids' education by things like that.
Right.
You know,
can you get out successfully at 18?
Will you not be in my basement?
Right, exactly. 100%.
Exactly. So what we found was that it's really kind of a mixed bag across Generation Z. So most likely, these young people are working in professions that are not going to be around in about 10 years or so.
Wow, okay.
They're concentrated a lot in retail, customer service, customer-facing types of roles, which, as we know, are being automated and phased out. And the next most popular area is around education and healthcare, which is a growing field. So that's a good thing. But when you look at the most lucrative of the professions, so the STEM jobs, like the professional class, such as attorneys, finance, those are the lowest representation. And we also looked at post-secondary credential completion, which was really interesting.
Okay.
So about 75% of people who finish high school know they need to do something, and they do something.
Okay.
The most popular path is a traditional 2 or 4 year degree. And so for all the talk about is college worth it or not worth it, young people seem to think that it is, and they definitely pursue it. But the problem is they're not finishing.
Okay. What can you
quantify it?
Yes.
I sure can.
Okay.
So about 56% of people decide to pursue either a 2 year or 4 year degree. Of that 56% who pursue it, about 38 complete a 2 year degree, and about 48% complete a 4 year degree.
Okay. All right. That's amazing. And so what are some other things that we found? I know I was reading about the salaries, which I thought was huge. So tell us about that.
Okay, so charter kids. So I need to tell you, I disaggregated the data. So I looked only at public school graduates.
Okay.
So this is nobody that went to a private school, no one who didn't finish high school, no one who went to high school in another country, nobody who was homeschooled. So just people who graduated from public high schools in the United States. And among them, we found that when we disaggregated the data between the district-run public schools and charter public schools, charter kids were crushing it, like on literally every life indicator of success.
Every life indicator?
Every one.
Okay.
Let's talk about salary, because salary is bananas.
Right,
okay.
right.
So on average, a kid who completes high school at a charter school makes about $22,000 more a year.
Just from graduating from a charter school?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, we looked at a lot of different data points. So we looked at race. We looked at family income. We looked at whether you were a first-gen college student or not. We looked at geography. We looked at a whole bunch of different demographics, and none of them were as close to having a significant impact as simply what type of public school you went to.
Well, that says a lot. That says a lot. And I want to mention that I love the fact that you focus primarily on public school because, I actually just recently saw a campaign with Mike Epps. Have you seen that campaign?
No, I've not.
Okay. I don't even
Mike Epps is hilarious.
Yeah, Mike Epps is hilarious and I love him, but he is doing a public school campaign about returning to public school, which is great. I probably should, next time I catch it, I'm going to record it, but I'm sure everything is internet searchable at this point. But what I found interesting about that is like, okay, no shade to traditional public school or public school in general. I'm a public school graduate. However, those indicators are so important because it's like, well, what are you getting out of the education? Because there is that narrative that like you get what you pay for. And so often we see people who will choose private school or magnet schools or what have you because they feel like they have a better education. But in this report, we're finding that you can get a public education, tuition free, that will also show better outcomes. And it's in the form of a charter school. Did you get any pushback about that when you released the study?
So no. This is what blew my mind. I was absolutely ready. I had my bulletproof vest on. I was ready.
You're like, okay, this would have said. Ready to cover, right?
But not one piece of pushback.
Okay.
Not a negative social media post.
Okay.
Not a negative article. Nothing.
That's great.
And
that's great.
It is amazing. I think that a lot of that has to do with the rigor of the research. So number one, I partnered with the Harris Poll, which is really popular, really well known. Their brand is bigger than mine, and so they're not
good. That's smart for you, right? Yeah.
So the Harris Poll,
at least for now, they are. Yeah.
At least for now. So they're not going to put their brand behind numbers that they can't stand up for.
Right.
They absolutely will not do that. And simply having the Harris Poll name brought so much credibility to the research. And I heard off the record, a couple people in the space were like, hey, these numbers real? And the response was, have you heard of the Harris Poll?
Right.
I mean, they're not going to make up some, right.
Right. And why would we do this? That would be the purpose of doing it anyway.
Exactly. But literally no pushback. I think also the sample size was very significant, and that brought a lot. And there was just a lot of rigor to the process. It was a very intensive process in the field. We asked a wide range of questions, and I went into it hoping to see certain things, and some things that I hope to see, and I'll be happy to tell you about that I didn't actually see.
Okay, that's fair.
And some things that I was like just blown away, and I did see some stuff that like really surprised me.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good segue, because I was going to ask you, what was your motivation for wanting to do a polling like this in the first place? But what was, I mean, I know you to be someone who's always forward thinking. And so what was it that you were seeing that you were like, we have not tapped into this yet, that you found? So for me, I was really motivated by two things. So number one, we are in like almost the Hunger Games right now in public education. So it's very dystopian.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a scarcity of resource. Scarcity of kids, because population numbers are declining, which means enrollment numbers are declining, which means funding for school is going down. People are like exiting a lot of cities and states that used to be big populous areas, and that's also affecting property taxes, but it's affecting funding. And so people are really fighting over these scarce resources. And so my thing is, how do you equip lawmakers and legislators to be able to make smart decisions with limited resources? If you got to put your money somewhere, you better put it somewhere that matters. So this whole business of like continuing to pay for the heat on the school that's half empty is kind of dumb, right? We need to do some different things. And so I wanted to have some data about what is working in public schools. And so that was number one. And then number two, to be able to look out a little bit and to look at life outcomes rather than backwards looking metrics. And you know, I love myself some charter schools, but let me just say this, even within our space, we have largely measured ourselves by standardized test scores, by graduation rates.
Just kind of falling into the same pattern that we tried to exist without replicating what's already out there. Right?
Exactly. We don't have to define ourselves that way. Another thing that we've struggled with, I think, in the sector is defending the fact that we will take in kids who have not done well other places. And so when they come in, they're not knocking it out the park. This was not a kid, you know, regardless of what people may try to get you to believe, these are not kids who were like on the honor roll where they were coming from.
Absolutely.
They were struggling academically.
Like usually a charter school is like the final option before they just opt out completely. Exactly. If they can get in, right?
So you got a middle school that's taking a kid in like, you know, 6th grade, and that kid is on like a 2nd grade reading level. What do you think that's going to do for that school's standardized assessment data? It's going to take it, right? And every year they're bringing in a new class of new like 5th and 6th graders who are so far below reading level and math level. It's going to take your standardized assessments. And so when you're measuring these schools against other schools, sometimes the data doesn't tell the full story. But when we're able to get these kids who learn to persist, who believe that they can do hard things, and they may not be A students, maybe they're C students, but they keep working and persisting, They graduate, they go to college, they do hard things.
Right.
They succeed in hard majors. How are we quantifying that? And that's really what led me to want to do this work.
Absolutely. The impact is larger when you look at it from that perspective. Because you get, I mean, what's the point of graduating, especially at this day and age, with just a high school diploma, if you're not seeing the direction of that? And it's interesting enough too, because I think that we've had a whole series of conversations with founders who work directly with opportunity youth, and basically, very much in this case, Generation Z, who have just opted out or was it overage or under credit. But one of the interesting things is that a lot of it is really building into, like, I had to work, I had to drop out because I had a baby, and you know, all these different things. What I love about this study is that it's showing you that you still need to get this degree or diploma, because there's so much more weight to what's going to happen on the other side once you get this. And also just the fact that, you know, you just have data to support what we know to be qualitative about these kids. Just want people to listen to them. You know, they just want people to hear that, hey, like, I'm a little bit more advanced probably in thinking and obviously in technology than maybe my parents were. And the way you got my school system structure set up ain't really working for me, you know?
Thank you.
Which is like a pretty basic, simple thing to think about right now, right?
We also literally, we wanted to know what kids took advantage of that was offered to them. So if you were offered tutoring, did you take advantage of it?
Did you take advantage of it?
If you were offered like
Test
advanced placement
courses,
courses, did you take advantage of it? Were you able to take advantage of alternative education scenarios? Like,
so that was also in this?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
So here's what surprised me. So our kids were less likely to have taken advantage of advanced placement courses and IB courses. Now, part of that has to do with the availability of those courses. A lot of times our schools are smaller, and so charter schools may not offer them. So that was one that I had hoped would have come out better, but the data just didn't bear it out. And that's in the report. I didn't hide it. But what I did find is that our kids were far more likely, like twice as likely, to have taken advantage of alternative education.
Wow. So what was do you mind me asking the percentage on that, or do you remember?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the precise number, but I think it would have been something like about 30-ish% in the Gen Pop and closer to like 65% in charter schools.
Okay.
So these are, you know, like, I had a kid, I'm coming back to school to like do credit recovery and catch up. We were far more likely to see charter kids using that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fantastic. So what were some of the other things that you just noticed about the report that maybe you were like, oh, I didn't expect this to come, well, you weren't expecting that outcome from it, that just kind of like pleasantly surprised you?
Okay. So the salary number for kids of color blew me away.
Okay.
There is a $55,000 salary differential for Black, Latino, Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, and Native American kids.
Across the board?
Yes.
Every demographic?
If you are Black, Native, Latin, you went to a charter school, on average you're making $55,000 more a year than your peer who did not. That's a whole nother job.
That's a whole nother job.
That's a whole nother job.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yes, that blew me away.
About to put my kids back in charter school.
Right?
Yeah.
That blew me away. Another one that was really pretty fascinating to me, we looked at degree completion, 2-year degree, 4-year degree, and advanced degrees. So at every level of degree completion, charter kids were just a little bit more likely to have completed, building up to a 7 percentage point gap between kids who went to district-run public schools and those who went to charter schools. But then when I disaggregated the data another way, because I love getting into these data tables, this blew me away. If you are the average kid of color who went to a charter school versus the average white child who went to a district-run public school, charter schools have effectively closed the degree attainment gap.
All right. Okay. See, people go by, no, you lying. You lying about that one. You're gonna, I'm going to tell you right now that when this airs, we're going to have to make sure that we show that, because that is powerful.
Yes.
That completely, dismantles this theory that we've seen about like who goes where and why,
Mm-hmm.
and also is solutions driven.
Yes.
Because you can take that data and be able to say, well, what are we finding on the qualitative side that has closed that gap?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that is exactly right. I mean, if you are a kid who went to a charter school, a kid of color went to a charter school, you're actually 2 percentage points higher to have graduated with a 2-year degree, and literally exactly the same on a 4-year degree as the average white kid who went to a public school. And so when we're trying to figure out how do we get...
You see my head, I'm like, how do we... That's exactly what you feel. You're reading my mind right now.
How do we get kids who have been historically underserved and are statistically less likely to complete a credential, how do you get them to do that? You put them in charter schools is what you do.
You put them in a tuition-free environment that allows them to have autonomy in their growth and in their learning and have different structures and different formats, maybe smaller class size, maybe more culturally affirming teaching, listening to what they want as opposed to what the teacher wants. I mean, these are just all things that I'm personally thinking. I could be off, but
those are real. I think one of the other things that was really important, we asked this question about people believing in you. Did people in your school believe that you could do something hard? Did they trust that you could break through barriers and encourage you to do that? And it was far more likely to be the case in a charter school than in a district-run public school. We also asked, was there somebody that really cared about your success? Were you expected to get into college? Were you expected to be successful in life?
Wow. So we've got a little bit of time left, and I wanted to, because I was thinking more about that. I'm curious to know what's next, because this is huge. This is groundbreaking, and so I'm hoping this is something that will continue. What are you working on now?
Well, I am working on my next report, which I'm just starting to collect the data on it. This is around, I have 2 things popping actually. So one, I'm looking at chronic absenteeism. Everybody's talking about it. We all know that the numbers have gone bananas since COVID and haven't really rebounded. I'm interested in how that tracks to schools of choice.
Okay.
So if you choose the school that you go to, whether that be a magnet school or a charter school or like, an arts-focused school in your school district or whatever, what happens then? My hypothesis is that you're probably more likely to want to keep going to a school that you choose to go to for whatever reason, as opposed to a school that you're being just kind of assigned to. That's my hypothesis. We'll see. The other thing that I'm curious about is how chronic absenteeism breaks out along socioeconomic levels by grade band. So I got a theory. I think that smaller kids need to go to school, particularly when they're in a low socioeconomic family. It's daycare. You get your lunch there, you get your breakfast there. It's super important.
Right. You get your love there.
You get your love there, right? And something happens when they get a little bit older around high school where they're responsible for themselves, getting themselves to school. They have a little bit more autonomy. They're not living like your kid or my kid where you get in the back of the car, I'm driving you to school, and you're going right in that building. And if you try to come back out of that building, somebody's going to text me immediately.
Right, exactly.
So they don't have that. They've got a lot more freedom. And I think you start to see them drop off some. And I think the opposite thing happens with kids who are more affluent. I think what has happened after the pandemic is that more affluent families have decided that school is maybe not that important for little ones. Let's go off a month and go to Paris and, or let's go check out Machu Picchu. It's far more socially accepted to do that. And I think that flips when they get into high school. And then all of a sudden, parents get very serious about trying to get these more affluent kids into good colleges. So I think there's a racial yin-yang thing going on there.
Well, I'm interested to read that and find about your studies. And I actually, just from what you were saying, can honestly attest to that. I mean, I was just telling someone, because Freedom to Choose Schools, we've kind of opened up we've broadened our umbrella to just not be exclusive to charter schools and think about homeschools and micro schools, private schools. Specifically for founders of color and students of color. And as I've learned more about homeschooling specifically, I'm kind of regretting that I didn't keep my kids home K through 3, because they could have come with me and traveled with me and done a little bit more stuff. And so that I'm like, oh man, and of course, like now they're in high school. I'm like, don't you want to stay home with mom? They're like, hell no. Like, I want to get away from you as much as I possibly can. So it'll be interesting. And I hope that you come back and join us to share that data as well.
I would love to.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, and I'm loving the fact that you're taking the leadership and showing like not only the communications of this. One of the things that in agency, you talk about the intersection between communication, advocacy, and parent power,
yep.
which I think is amazing. And so I'm always a fan and a champion of your work, and will continue to make sure people know Debbie Veney, Agency Inc. One of the things that we continually do, and I think you did it the last time you were here, we talked about like choice words.
Mm-hmm.
Choice words is basically like, what is it that you want people to know as we close out the episode? What should they be paying attention to? Or what should they be hearing from you?
I would say that people should be asking the right questions.
Okay.
So don't let other people determine how you're measuring success, outcomes, where investments need to ask the right questions.
Ask the right questions.
And we have, I think as a society, and especially as parents, allowed other people to define what success looked like for our kids. And it usually looks like they brought home an A. Mm-hmm. on their test or on the report card.
Yeah.
But ask the right questions. We need to be holding our civic leaders, our lawmakers accountable for creating pathways to prosperity for our children. Mm-hmm. That really needs to be the measure.
Right. No, that's actually a really good point, because an A does not quantify anything, because there's a lot of people that were getting A's and mm-hmm. still weren't on grade level. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because they were just getting passed through. So ask the right questions. What does that A mean? Is mm-hmm. my child able to read on grade level? Are they proficient in math? Those types of questions is what yep. you're referring to. So Debbie, if people wanted to hear more about this report or think that you were lying and need to see the numbers for themselves, where could they find that information?
That is at agencyworks.org/research.
All right, awesome. Well, again, this is Freedom to Choose Schools with our podcast Choice Words and our guest, Debbie Veney. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for our next episode.